I'm Aaron Smith with the University of Tennessee. I'm a crop marketing specialist. In these videos, we will be discussing crop marketing and the importance of understanding the terminology and the different tools that can be used to mitigate price risk and improve the prices that farmers obtain for corn and soybeans. Before we get into how to use tools, it's imperative to end up understanding some basic terminology so you can effectively communicate with others in the grain marketing system. Cash price or spot price is the price that is received for an individual sale when you're delivering the commodity to a specific location. It involves ending up delivering a specified quantity and quality of grain for a price that is paid immediately upon delivery. The cash price is broken into two different components, the futures price and the basis price. Both of those will ultimately affect the amount of money that the producer receives for their commodity. The futures price is a price that's determined at the Chicago Board of Trade or Chicago Mercantile Exchange. That price is determined by buyers and sellers of commodities in addition to speculators that are involved in financial markets. Basis is the difference between the cash price and the futures price. Basis can be positive or negative depending on the supply and demand characteristics of your location. Basis is important because it's a direct reflection of supply and demand of the commodity in your area. Basis will influence the cash price that you end up getting for the commodity produced. Hedging is financial transactions that offset each other so that to mitigate the price risk or changes in a market. The delivery month in a contract is the time interval or the specific date that the commodity is delivered to the elevator or the market that the producer is accessing. Now I will show you the CME Futures Board and tell you how to interpret the different categories that are shown on this board.
In this video, I will discuss how to find and interpret information on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, or CME. The Chicago Mercantile Exchange is an organized exchange for the trading of futures and options. Trading futures contracts, such as those for corn, soybeans, and wheat, assist in price discovery and allow farmers to manage price risk for the commodities they produce. The CME Group is the source for futures and option market price quotes and trade data for most agricultural products. I will use corn as an example for the information that can be found on the CME board. An overview of the commodity is shown on the screen. ZCZ5 is the trading symbol for the December 2025 corn contract. Last is the most recent trade price for the commodity. In this case, the December contract traded at $4.07. That is a change from the previous session of 1 3/4 cents. Volume gives an indication of the number of contracts that have been traded in this session. Looking at contract specifications are very important. What it allows us to end up looking at is the quantity that is traded. So in this case for corn, 5,000 bushels, the currency, when the markets are open, and then what the minimum price or tick that a commodity can end up moving. It also gives a list of the contracts that can be traded for the commodity. The calendar provides dates for key time periods for a specific contract. When we look at different contract months, we can determine the first trade and the last trade. In this case, when we look at the September 2025 contract, you can see that trading started December 15th, 2022, and the last day of trading will be September 2025. Corn futures price quotes are available for several months and several years. When looking at a price quote, it is important to identify the contract that's being traded. So in this case, September 2025. Last is the most recent price. Change is the change of price for this session. Open is the price that the contract opened at. High and low give an indication of the range, and then volume indicates how many contracts were traded for the session. It's also important to note that most of these price quotes are on at least a 10-minute delay. So looking at when the most recent price quote was updated is very important. When we look at options, if we click on options, it provides the information for the options associated with the underlying futures contract selected. And so we can look at our different strike prices, what our premiums are for puts or calls. Again, this is specific to the underlying futures contract. When looking at a futures chart, there's several pieces of information that are important. When we look at this, there's several different ways to end up viewing futures price data. When we're looking at this, this is for the December 2025 contract in 1-day increments. So each one of these lines provides an indication of what happened for that specific trading date. And so you can see as we hover over top of each one of these individual bars, it provides 4 pieces of information: the open, the high, the low, the close, and then also the change in price from the previous session. So when we look at this, the green bars indicate that the price was up for the session. The red bars indicate the price was down for the session. When we have this type of format, we have the high and the low indicated by the top of this wick and the bottom of this wick. And then the open and the close is represented by the solid bar in the middle. And so when we end up looking at this, it's easy to end up looking at how big of the trading range was for the day, what the price movement was, and if there's a trend in the market. So for example, when we look from February 21st to March 5th, what we see consecutive closes lower, indicating a downward trend in the market. Similarly, if we look from April 7th until April 17th, what we see an upward trend in the market as we have continual improvements in prices at the end of each trading day. We can also look at different intervals. So we can look at minute data, we can look at daily data, we can look at weekly data. So it's important to understand what you're looking at when you're looking at a futures chart.